We have just a few more folks coming in. We're going to get started here any second when Diane wants to get us going.
Welcome, everyone. I would like to begin with just welcome everyone to the 2022 International Women's Day Interfaith Panel Conversation, celebrating the tremendous efforts by women and girls around the world in shaping a more equal future and recovery from COVID-19 pandemic. I would first like to acknowledge the directors of the music groups, Director Julie Ford from St. Mary's College, the dance director Eileen Bertram from the Branham High School in San Jose, the director of music from the Homestead High School in Cupertino, Jeff Morton, and directors Ken Abrams and Jennifer Brown from the Danville Girls Chorus for their musical and artistic additions to tonight's program. I would like you all to know that all these wonderful videos were done during the COVID times, and it was a way of the arts surviving during those times. And I'm proud of those organizations to have them here on our program today.
And we're proud to have a chair like you, Diane Maltester. Thank you for being our chair, and all of those others that have served before you. As Interfaith Councils, we understand land acknowledgements as a transformative act meant to confront our place on native lands and to build mindfulness of our present participation in colonial legacies. We recognize that the cultural heritage of California begins no less than 15,000 years ago, and that the entire Bay Area rests on evidence of indigenous cultures. The pre-contact indigenous population in California was one of the largest and most diverse in the Western Hemisphere, and spoke over 300 Native American dialects as well as 90 languages. Today, there are approximately 9 indigenous dialects spoken in the Bay Area, and California is home to more people of Native American and Alaskan Native heritage than any other state in the country. There are currently over 100 federally recognized Native American tribes in California, and even more communities and tribal groups, including the Ohlone, who are not currently federally recognized. California has the highest Native American population in the country, with Los Angeles and San Francisco having 2 of the largest urban Native American populations in the United States.
let's go meet him in the skies. We will hear the angels singing in that morning.
Oh, I really do believe that just before the end of time, we will hear the angels singing in that morning. Rise, oh mothers, rise, let's go meet them in the skies. We will hear the angels singing in that morning. Oh, I really do believe that just before the end of time, we will hear the angels singing in that morning. No time to tarry here, no time to wait for you, no time to tarry here, for I'm on my journey home. No time to tarry here, no time to wait for you, no time to tarry here, for I'm on my journey home.
Brothers, oh, fare ye well. Brothers, oh, fare ye well. Brothers, oh, fare ye well, for I'm on my journey home.
Sisters, oh, fare ye well. Sisters, oh, fare ye well. Sisters, oh, fare ye well, for I'm on my journey. Journey rise, oh fathers, journey rise, oh fathers. We will hear the angels singing in the morning. Journey rise, oh fathers, rise, oh fathers, hear the angels singing in that morning. No time, no time, for I'm on my journey home. No time, no time, no time, on my journey home. Time to tarry here, no time to wait for you, no time to tarry here, Father's journey home. No time to tarry here, no time to wait for you, no time to tarry, for I'm on my journey, journey.
Oh, I really do believe that just before the end of time, we will hear the angels singing in that morning.
Again, thank you, St. Mary's College, the soprano and alto ensemble directed by Julie Ford, their award-winning choir department at St. Mary's. Now it's my pleasure to talk about our fabulous panelists tonight. They come from varied backgrounds and have so much to offer. I'm just very excited, and so I will introduce our 6 panelists in alphabetical order. Maimoona Ahmed graduated from Cornell University with an MS in nutrition and sociology. Before becoming the chief nutritionist in pediatrics at New York University Medical Center, she worked in what today is called the WIC, Women, Infant, Children, working in health clinics in some of the poorest parts of the New York City. She is married to Dr. Nazir Ahmed, an Islamic scholar and former NASA space scientist who's from a small town near Bangalore. Throughout their marriage, they have traveled back to India over 22 times. They have 2 adult children and 3 grandchildren, all in the Bay Area. Maimoona is also a member of women's group circles that are composed of equal numbers Muslim, Christians, and Jewish women, which is sponsored by the Interfaith Council of Contra Costa County. Nice to have you here, Maimoona. Very importantly, I've left out a paragraph. For several years, she has been helping people with cancer who want to reverse their disease and become cancer-free with various alternative cancer treatments. She does this totally free of charge, considering all for the sake of God. Nandita Bhatnagar and her husband, Sandeep, are members of the Tri-Valley Hindu community, have been residents of San Ramon for the last 21 years. They have 2 daughters, both married, often come home to visit their 91-year-old grandma who lives with Nandita. She divides her time between taking care of the home and family. She volunteers for various organizations and is active in the community. Nandita is currently on the editorial board of Conservation Times. It's an ecoconservatientimes.com if you'd like to. We'll put the .com in the chat. It's a magazine which strives for conservation of ecology, and she is the vice president of clinical affairs for QuagSense, a medical device company. Eve Bird, our third person here, is the executive director of White Pony, a pioneer organization whose mission is to eliminate hunger and poverty by delivering the abundance to those in need with love. Eve oversees one of the largest food rescue and delivery organizations in Northern California, ensuring over 120,000 community members are food secure and have access to clothing, books, toys, and essential items. Eve has over 25 years experience administering programs and policies that protect and advance the public health, education, and rights of people who are underserved. Thea Bristlebroom has been practicing Wic since 1991 and has been a Gardnerian elder since 2013. She has served since 2016 on both the national and local boards for the Covenant of the Goddess. She was raised Catholic, but in her teens began looking for a religion that fit her better. In her 20s, she found Wicca, and it felt like coming home. She believes that each of us is walking a path uniquely our own, and that deity is manifest in all life. Thus, all life is sacred. Since childhood, she has been interested in what people believe and how they worship. She finds interfaith conversations fascinating, and she looks forward to speaking with us tonight. Cindy Gershon is a graduate of DVC, and she received her teaching credential from UC San Diego. She has been the food and culinary nutrition teacher at Mount Diablo High School in Concord, California here, for over 12 years. She just launched a 10-series TV show on YouTube called Farm to Taste. It is a county-wide educational show which focuses on students' health and around body environment. Mojdeh Palmer parents are from Iran. They left Iran in the mid-1950s to study the Bahá'i community. Let me try this again. You guys, I actually practiced this. You would never know. Anyway, Mojdeh parents are from Iran. They left Iran in the mid-1950s to support the Bahá'i community in Japan. She was born there and finished high school in Japan and then came to California for college. Mojdeh met her husband, where she met her husband, Chris, in Southern California. They moved up north in 1989 and now live in Clayton, and she works closely with the Bahá'i community in Clayton area. She has 2 sons who live in Texas At this moment, she is the manager of the Gynecological Cancer Service at John Muir and works very closely with patients there in the Gynecological Cancer Service. Thank you all. Let's welcome them. Can we just kind of do a clap for everyone that's here today? We have, when we talked about doing this presentation, one of our colleagues said, I can hardly wait to come. I was so interested in the questions that are being asked and the women that are going to be responding. Our first question of the night is, what are the current barriers to equality and how has COVID affected them? And we would like Maimoona to start with us.
Thank you, Diane. And thank you, Reverend Will, both of you for putting on this wonderful event. I hope that when the founding fathers said all men are created equal, they were including women. On the other hand, women's liberation should not be based on denying men their equal rights or feeling the need to put men down. Islam speaks of the mutual rights and responsibilities of men and women. Men and women should support each other and not take an adversarial position. Ignorance, I think, is the greatest enemy. Unless women are educated to know their rights and responsibilities, they will continue to suffer the consequences of male-dominated societies. Systemic racism is the barrier to equality in the United States for men and women. We're already familiar with the historical racism against Blacks, Hispanics, Native Americans, and others.
Maimoona, I think your
Within
papers
that,
might be,
additional discrimination.
Maimoona,
Yes,
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I think your papers might be rubbing on the computer because we can hear the papers quite a bit.
oh, thank you. Yeah, well, it's yeah.
It's a little
Okay.
hard to hear you.
I'll be more conscious of that. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Can you hear my tone? Is my voice loud enough? Okay. All righty. So the additional discrimination includes women, and sometimes it's women in the groups that are discriminated against twice as much. And since COVID-19, we've also seen the ugly rise of attacks on Asians. Racism, discrimination, lack of equal education, food deserts, high crime neighborhoods are all well known, and the glass ceiling for well-educated women. There is a need for change to put positive ideas into the minds of girls about who they are and what they can accomplish. In some societies, it's often other women, in fact, who maintain the status quo. In addition, discrimination against women is global, more oppressive in some societies than in others. I don't think we should impose Western ideas of women's position in society as the superior choice or the gold standard, nor should we judge other societies by American norms. We need to respect different ways of living and how different societies live their reality, and to remember that countries that are looked down upon today were once the most prosperous, most advanced, most civilized when the West was in the Dark Ages. So I think we need to be humble. However, I do believe that there are some universal no-nos like female infanticide and abuse of women in all its forms. Also, in many societies, it's not an issue of men versus women as much as it is oppressive governments that oppress both men and women. Now, I'd like to read a couple of quotes from the Quran because probably people have not heard the Quran. They've heard things about it, but not necessarily listened to it. We believe the Quran is the actual word of God. In Islam, the Quran speaks of a moral and spiritual equality of men and women, and I quote, "Indeed, those who surrender to God, men and women, and those who believe with certainty, men and women, and those who are satisfied with the presence of God, men and women, and those who are righteous, men and women, and those who are patient for their meeting with God, men and women, and those who are humble, men and women, and those who give charity, men and women, and those who fast, men and women, and those who guard their private parts, men and women, and those who remember God without limits, men and women. For them, God has prepared forgiveness and reward supreme." Prophet Muhammad said, and this is not in the Quran, these are his sayings, that heaven lies at the feet of the mother. He also said, women are the twin halves of men, and the rights of women are sacred. I hope someone else wants to follow up.
Yeah, thank you. Does someone else on the panel would like to continue with maybe something along the line of what she's been speaking of, or a personal story about how the COVID has affected your family and or that people that you've seen from the pandemic, how women have had to take on obviously roles quitting their jobs so that they could be home and watch the kids. Do you have any comments on that?
I do, Cindy.
Okay,
Gershen.
Cindy.
It was funny. I was just talking to my students. I teach sophomores through seniors, sophomore, juniors, and seniors. And I said to the young women today, you know, starting on Monday, you have the option to take your mask off. And the young women looked at me and they said, we're not taking our mask off. And I said, well, why not? And they said, and at my school is a Title I underserved school, and it's mostly Hispanic and 65% Hispanic and African-American young women. And they said, for people to see who we are and the pressure, we don't want to be singled out as not being pretty or their teeth wrong or anything wrong. And they feel protected by these masks. And I've been teaching for 12 years and I never imagined that would be one of the side effects. And it's I have a granddaughter that's a freshman in high school at Los Lomas, and she needs to get braces, but they put that aside, and she refuses to take her mask off because she doesn't want to be, she doesn't want people to see her. And I never thought that, I mean, it didn't even dawn on me that would happen with these kids, that they feel such pressure. And it's not just the underserved Hispanic community, but it's, and COVID has really put a lot of pressure on young women that, I don't want people to see me. I've been hiding. Nobody has seen me for 2 years. And, and the barriers of equality, hiding your face and is one thing, but, the inequity in parents not coming to the school. My grandchildren are here in Walnut Creek schools and these kids in the Bay Point schools. The difference is no participation from parents because the parents are working or, they just don't get that support. So I can see what COVID has done with these young with these families and these kids, but I never saw the hiding of one's face being a protection for these kids. That's what I'm seeing.
That really is astounding. I'm just on a superficial level, I just enjoyed not having to wear lipstick or put on makeup. But to hear these girls literally want to hide behind the mask.
They're afraid of the social media.
Mm-hmm.
That people will take pictures of them and say, hey, look at how they're just so fearful. And the social media has just come out and it's really zeroing in on women and how they looked and just this TikTok and all of that stuff. And more so since COVID, people doing their private things and, and it's sad. It's sad. It's sad to see that.
Cindy, can I ask you, are there any, this is Thea, by the way, are there any, because you said that these were low income, has there been any discussion about how expensive it is to maintain a certain look as opposed to a natural look, shall we say? In other words, are they also pressured to spend money on things that are not necessarily directly related to survival?
Oh,
you
absolutely.
know, yeah, and it's really expensive to go and do a lot of the makeup treatments and so forth,
Mhm.
get your nails done on a regular basis. It's something that men don't have to put up with in a
Yep.
certain sense. And it isn't as bad for a man if he shows up with a bit of a scruffy face instead of being clean shaven or whatever.
Right.
Women are attacked for their looks
By other women.
by other women and other men. But
Yes.
yeah. And
Mhm.
so when I look at the youth today, I see them getting, I would have called it sexualized
Yes.
much earlier. But I also want to speak to what resonated to me when you spoke about that, is that their innocence has been lost. They didn't ever really have to be just the way they are, and that was okay.
Mhm.
And it's sad.
Very
I
sad.
think another perspective, Cindy, and you and I have talked about what's happening to the kids at school. And I had thought that with the mask, the anonymity and the fact that we were all seeing each other as just, through our eyes was such a gift of the pandemic. And I think I would agree with what's been said. And I also feel like the pandemic has laid bare these systemic patterns of inequality and oppression. And I think once that happens, it's our flaws come to the surface as a people. And once they're there, we can't not see them. We can't go back. And so to me, there's also a real beauty about what has taken place. So we might pretend like, we're not impacted or we don't see them, but we see them and we're impacted. And I do feel like there's a tide that's carrying us to this more equal and more balanced place. And I think love is at the wheel, and I think we all know love is at the wheel, even though it doesn't appear to be necessarily at this moment. It's the only thing in this lifetime that we can't regret. There's no barrier in the world that love can't take down. And because love's at the wheel, there are all these barriers coming down. Things, all these things that are old that you're talking about, they're antiquated and they're ready to fall. And so I think we have to go through the pain, and the suffering of sort of all of this coming up. But there's a promise of something better. So I've seen, gifts of the pandemic, and I've seen tremendous deep challenge. But I've also seen a people more united, as we sort of come together, just like we can share so many examples of how this sort of collaboration has happened over the last couple of years that it wouldn't have happened this quickly were it not for COVID-19.
It's very true. May I just jump in?
Yes.
I agree with everything that everybody's saying. Definitely the COVID has exposed us to how close we are to a breaking point, and how unfair the portion of this additional burden that has been put on women. So really, women have been the ones who have suffered the most through this. And we have to think why have we suffered through this? And this is, I believe, because of the systemic oppression of women that has been going on for so long in history, restricted to narrow spheres of activity in life, and activity of the life of the society, denied educational opportunities and basic human rights. Today, from the Women's Health and Development from United Nations comes and says that, still 80% of the women are suffering because of violence, because of no access to education, and that their human rights have been taken away. And we're seen still as 3/4 human. That's how we're still seen around the world. We're still only 3/4. So all these limitations have stopped women from gaining their full potential. And what potentials women have that have been suppressed because of all this. And this age-old pattern of subordination is reflected in popular culture. Yeah, we see the advertisements of what women and girls should be like and how they should dress, like the makeup, right? Or the straight teeth, or the pure and beautiful skin that we all have to have, and the hair. And also it reflects in literature, in art, in law, in the law that's practiced, and even in religious institutions, there are discriminations that go on. And so we have to understand that even though in this country there are advancements of political and civil rights for women, which is fantastic, and it's widely accepted as a principle, full equality has not been seen in this country, and that the gains for women are resting on still on a little bit of a shaky ground. And that's because it sits on inherited assumptions, and we have to dispel those assumptions. And so, sorry.
No, that's very good. And I think sometimes people think that gaining or helping women will lessen the male and identity. And the truth is we can all work together, as it is with everything that we do, I would assume. I would really like Nandita's view, only because during the pandemic, she said she was taking care of her 91-year-old grandmother and family. And I know that must be hard. Do you want to address that at all?
Well, thank you, Diane. But yeah, generally speaking, it wasn't such a bigger problem domestically. We were working from home, and it actually was a benefit, because otherwise we would, go to the offices and come back in the evenings. So she was left alone for a longer period. So COVID actually helped because we were there in person. But, this question merits a secondary response, in the sense that the COVID did have some secondary impacts on women in general. And it's very interesting. I read somewhere that the World Economic Forum very recently had published that in order to acquire the economic parity between a man and a woman, it's going to take 257 years. This is like a global number, right? So averaging it out. And that's like pretty scandalous if you think about that. But I'm sure COVID has set us back. But one aspect that I want to bring to light in terms of things I observed at my workplace also were, I think somebody just mentioned that women is considered, like, legally, if you think women globally have about three-quarters of legal rights when compared to a man. And I don't mean to say that women have more legal problems than men, but they do tend to have some specific issues which have very deep and, impactful socioeconomic lifestyle impact. So some of those would be like, especially nowadays, would be like, when they go through divorces or alimony, child support, sexual violence, of course, lack of access to assets, or like a legal identity, all these things, and most of these things that I mentioned, I want to say 90% of them do require a court intervention, because it's not the only avenue, but most likely it is the avenue to seek justice, right? So then what happens in COVID? What happened is, well, the courts, we expose their weaknesses, because traditionally courts are very slow to adapt technology, right? So they do rely on in-person appearances. And women, when they are going through these instances of life-changing, altering, where they need legal counsel, if they don't have access, they cannot go to the courts. And lots of things they were really subjected to a lot of issues that will set them back a long time. So that is one of the secondary impact of COVID in terms of the gender equality that I have noticed in person.
I think we can unless someone else wants to say something, I think we can move on to the second question. What in your sacred text speaks to equality? And I would also like to include maybe in your faith traditions, where do you find women's connecting? Or do you have certain programs and that sort of thing, that what is there for you? And Nandita, I think we could ask you to start that.
So sacred text for the Indian Hindu culture, a collection of books. It's called as Vedas, Vedas. That's a collection of ancient scripture books in very ancient languages also. And so they go back like 10,000 years in time. And the root word is Ved, like VID, and it corresponds to wisdom. So these books impart a lot of wisdom for us. And so in a religious sacred text, we find answers in them. And in terms of the theme for today for gender equality, there are some very clear scripts mentioned in them that there is equality between women and men, and that the concept that all human beings are free to develop their personal abilities and make choices without any limitation has been mentioned. One of the books from that time, one of the Vedas, is called Rig, R-I-G, Rig Veda. That's very ancient. And in that, a lot of contribution has been made by women. So in those days, this is like thousands of years ago, about 29 female sages have contributed towards the formation or writing of the Rig Veda, which is pretty big in terms of, it tells me that the women were never discriminated in matters of religion, education, and were not prevented from gaining excellence in their field in the society. And then the presence of so many female sages, it tells me that education was, and some of these Vedas are considered like straight from the mouth of God, right? So if they were considered, women were considered fit enough, qualified enough, eligible enough to receive and spread the divine revelations. That feels very important to me. And then in another of the book, like I said, the Vedas, another book is called as Upanishad, and it's hard to pronounce, but it's somewhere that literally means that you sit at the feet of your teacher and you listen what he's teaching. So in that book, there's a reference to synthesis of masculine and feminine energies of the cosmos. And it's basically a celebration that there's equality, highlighting the complementary nature of a man and a woman, or a male and female principles are inseparable. And it just says that, they need to become complete together, and they do complement each other. And there are some other scriptures or some text that pertain to the wisdom of the woman, where they say that, woman is a life-giving, enlightening, life-giving, should be respected as a mother every day, and she provides peace, eradicates all hatred from the society, and brings about cohesiveness. There's some scriptures around that. So that's where it speaks to me personally about equality in my scriptures.
Oh, I'd like to follow up on that if I may. Thank you, Nandita. That was lovely. I'd like to share with you a little bit of the Wiccan point of view. And so just a clarification, when I was introduced, the religion that I practice is called Wicca. No, that's quite all right. We didn't discuss that. So in our rituals that we do, we have something we call the blessing prayer, and this is specific to my Gardnerian tradition. And I'd like to read it for you. It's very short. But Drichten, we believe, is a word that comes from Old English, and it probably means something like Lord, in the sense of a high Lord. So we light 2 candles, and we say, in the name of Drichten, the ancient providence, which was from the beginning and is for all eternity, male and female, the original source of all things, all-knowing, all-pervading, all-powerful, changeless, eternal. In the name of Our Lady of the Moon and the Horned Lord of Death and Rebirth, in the names of the mighty ones of the four quarters, the kings of the elements, blessed be this place and this time, and they who are with us. And a lot of people have talked about this in our different discussion groups, but most of the Wiccans that I know see this as saying that male and female are equal. There is no one over the other. And this Drichten, whatever it is sort of an amalgamation of both halves, if you will. Our basic concepts of divinity, we have a goddess and we have a god because we want everyone to be able to see a divine feminine. We worship the goddess primarily, and some versions of Wicca don't even recognize or worship a god, a male god. But the other thing that it says is that there's strength and power in connecting with the Drichten. But we have these intercessions, the Lady of the Moon and the Horned Lord of Death and Rebirth. We can relate to them better because they are closer to us. And so they're the intermediary between the two. But in our rituals, it's the woman, the high priestess, who's leading the ritual, who is in charge. And so every single ritual we do, the woman is the person who makes the decisions. And it sometimes is difficult for men when they join Wicca to understand that dynamic and to understand that they don't have the opportunities or even really the need to make all the decisions and be in charge. And it's hard for them sometimes to adjust. One of the things I think women do very well is we adjust and we adapt and we change ourselves to suit the need of the people that depend on us. And the second thing I wanted to say is that for all of us who are concerned about Ukraine, the patron goddess of Ukraine, and I'm probably going to mangle this pronunciation, is Berhana or something like that. And it's she is seen as a shield, a protectress, not so much a warrior per se, but as the mother whose skirts you can hide behind kind of thing, but very fierce in defense of her children. And I wanted to share that image with you as we are all aware of the situation there. Thank you.
I have more questions for you maybe at another time, Thea.
Sure.
But anyone else would like to talk about? Yes.
Mojdeh. Yes. So the question was, what in your sacred text speaks of equality? Everything in the Baha'i faith talks about equality, everything. Over a century ago, Baha'u'llah, the prophet founder of the Baha'i faith, proclaimed the equality of women and men. And a direct quote from him says, "Women and men have been and will always be equal in the sight of God." And you know, he didn't leave this pronouncement as an ideal or a pious hope, but he wove it into as a basic factor into the fabric of his social order. And he supported these laws by requiring the same standard of education for women as for men and equality of rights in the society. For the Baha'is, the equality of the sexes is a spiritual and moral standard that rests on the central spiritual principle of the oneness of humankind. So without the equalities, the talents, and the skills of both women and men, full economic and social development of the planet becomes impossible. I wanted to again quote from the Baha'i writings about this, because as we all know, we believe that these quotes are divine and they have a special power to them. So if you will allow me, the world of humanity is possessed of two wings, the male and the female. So long as these two wings are not equivalent in strength, the bird will not fly. Until womankind reaches the same degree as man, until she enjoys the same arena of activity, extraordinary attainment for humanity will not be realized. Humanity cannot wing its way to heights of real attainment. As long as women are prevented from attaining their highest possibilities, so long will men be unable to achieve the greatness which might be theirs. Regard humanity as a single individual and one's own self as a member of that corporeal form. If pain or injury afflicts any member of that body, it must inevitably result in suffering for all the rest. So this is the importance that equality is not, it has to, like we were just hearing, that it's the coming of together, and it's not one is more important than the other, but really the uniting of the planet. And I wanted to give you an illustration of how important education for girls are in the Baha'i faith. Baha'u'llah says that if a family has a daughter and a son, and they have only enough money to educate one child, the daughter should be educated, because it is this daughter who will become the educator of the future generation. And without an educated mother, generations to come will lose out on what is theirs. So just wanted to emphasize the importance of education in the Baha'i faith for young girls, for women, and also that this equality is the foundation of the oneness of humanity.
Yeah,
I love that.
that's
I
beautiful.
love the idea of the oneness of humanity, and certainly resonate with that. And I think when I was thinking about the question, I was taking it more, a little bit more personally, and thinking about that to me, equality is essentially love. And the work that I do for myself, because that's sort of who that's the only person I can semi-control, and I don't even think I'm in control of myself, but is just this practice of trying to empty myself out, to disempower my lower self and all my desire nature and all of that, so that I can be this open vessel and fill myself with love for other people. And in that space, I'm able to freely receive love and freely give love and not discriminate. So it's not like, I love you so much because you're my mother, but I don't know you and I don't love you in that same way. It's, I love you no matter what. And that struck me as again, the great equalizer, that if all of us can empty ourselves of self and fill ourselves with, and be kind of open to be filled by love, and then that creates the vessel for love. And I think that women have a unique capacity for that.
I wanted to add to that, Eve, you're just a blessing in my life. And all of you for what you've shared. In our tradition, Jewish tradition, I study Musar, and it is the spiritual part of Judaism. And one of the things that came to me when we're talking is studying that not to take more than my space, but not less than my place. And to protect, I wrote down, I teach at school, I teach to protect the innocent. And that is one of the traditions that I think which is what I love about Judaism. And I don't know other people's religion other than what I've seen. And I know how much I'm attracted to Sufism and being on the board at the White Pony. But I'm attracted to people that protect the innocent. And part of what our tradition is to come along, to bring the earth back together. And and men hurt and women hurt and children hurt. And when we're hurting each other because we can't stay in our space and we can't take our space, I try to teach that to the children around me. And often I fall short of staying in my own space myself, because I think I know, come on, just do what I say. And, but thank God. And like you said, it's love. It is really love is the equalizer. And when I can trust the people around me that have love in their heart, that they can see, even when I step out of my space, that I'm coming from love. And I so want to step into your place to fix it. And, we're doing the best we can. And I loved when you said about your highest self and your lowest self. I think that's why we have religion, so that we can help each other stay in our space, but take up not too much, and then to help each other. And it's just wonderful to see, all the different, I feel like, oh, that's a spiritual truth, because every person in this room is talking the same love. And that means there's one God, that we believe there's one power out there. Then we're all looking at from a different point of view. So I think that protect the innocent. Protect the innocent. Thank you.
If I can jump in, I love what you had to say, Cindy, and I appreciated everyone's comments. There is only one truth, and everyone is going toward their understanding. And we could say the truth is God or higher power, and everyone is moving in that direction. And it's like the spokes of a wheel. Everyone is on the circle, and all the spokes are all the different beliefs. In the Quran, there's a sentence that said, if God had wanted, he could have made you all believe the same, but instead he's created you differently. And in fact, I had a flat tire. This is when I lived in Southern California, and these Hispanic men, about 5 of them, when it was already dark in the evening, they were fixing my car. And they were also trying to missionize to me. They were no longer Catholic. They were, I forgot what Protestant sect. And when I said that to them, that if God had wanted, he could have made everyone believe the same, they were dumbfounded. They had a list of probably the typical thing you would say and how they would respond, but they absolutely had no answer to that. But it's really true. And therefore, we have to respect, we have to love people of every faith, of every background, and so on, whether it's somebody who's gay or lesbian and so on. In my family, I have people that belong to just about every major and some minor religions of the world, and straight and gay people. So if I start listing, I'll be listing all of you. So, it's like there's a place for all of us, and every one of us is here for a reason. God did not just put us here to be used by others, and by used, I mean abused, that kind of used, but in fact, to actualize ourselves as best we can. And being a teacher is absolutely wonderful, because you are reaching out to so many young people and changing lives. I mean, I can remember, I loved my 3rd grade teacher. That was a long time ago. I loved my 5th grade teacher. One was a man, one was a woman. And so on. And so those memories of really good teachers, you knew they cared about you. And I think, yes, if so many women are now homeschooling, we haven't discussed that. And I know people from many different backgrounds that are homeschooling, and that's a huge devotion, to be not just the child's first teacher, which is what we are as mothers with babies, but to be the teacher. It's a huge responsibility. And if we have that wholesomeness and togetherness and can articulate it to our children, homeschooling can be very, very effective. Although I did not homeschool my kids. I had them in public school. I think the interaction that they get on an everyday basis in a classroom is important. But I have friends who are homeschooling, and I see beautiful children there too. So even in education, there are so many paths, but the goal is the same, to create loving, intelligent person who's thinking of what they can do to make the world a better place.
Can I just jump in?
Sure.
After all these talk about love, there's two quotes that have come to my mind from the Baha'i writings. And one says, in the world of existence, there is no more powerful magnet than the magnet of love. And then another quote that came to mind is, where there is love, nothing is too much trouble, and there is always time. So, I just wanted to tell, also chime in as to the importance of love. And really, it is something that will bring us all together.
This is wonderful, ladies. I can't tell you. I personally have had one time I walked into a church and I said, "What is your congregation? What's it like? And can I be an elder?" And they said, "No, women cannot be an elder." And so I walked out and I said, I don't know what gave me the strength to do that, but I want to give people the strength to help assist with love to create a faith environment that is creative. And one of the reasons that drew me to the disciples' faith is the fact that they allow women to be pastors. And we were one of the first faith organization to have a woman as the head of the entire national organization. So I think we need to follow our hearts when we have this, and to remind me to stay calm and be in loving nature rather than go out there with a big with a force sometimes that we can get. I think that's changing because of the times. And in that the next thing is, before I go on, if anyone in the audience would like to ask questions, please put them in the chat, and we will either use them at the end, or we will have Will said he would read them if need be. The third question is, what tools or resources does your faith traditions offer you for your quest for equality? And Cindy, you were going to start that for me.
At my synagogue, we have a social action committee. And like I was alluding to before, to Kam Alam, we are here to be of service. And if in our faith, if one person is demeaned, put down, or it's like murdering them when you keep them from their right to their own existence. And so we're very active socially, and the committee that I'm on, we raise awareness and ask for money from everybody. And I know a lot of, I know that Eve, White Pony is supported by, the church that you go to, your temple, and the giving, the wanting to give, tzedakah, that you give a part of what you make to make the world a better place, and holding 10% of your land. And this year there'll be no, in Israel, and a lot of the Orthodox farms, they aren't farming because every 7 years you have to let everything just rest, and it's a time of rest, and it's a time to rejuvenate. And we just keep coming back to love and to give, and to protect. And, that I'm just so grateful that I have that community that I am in that says, look around and see who you can help. That is your job, is to speak up when others can't. That is what God has you here for. And I am just, that quest for, till we are, I don't know who said it, till when we are all free, no one's free, and that's what our quest is. When there's not another hungry person. How long are you going to be doing this for, Cindy? Eve, how long are you going to do this for? Well, till there's not another hungry person. That's how long. And even now, at school where I keep teaching about, the health and nutrition, and we need to stay doing it because it's a job that's never done. It's a job that is never done, that you have to keep reminding people, remember to feed that child, remember to eat well, remember to care for each other. That's why religion has lasted so long, I'm sure, because we have to keep being reminded. We forget, and we are all here. And I know that, in our tradition, it's like you are to teach. The mother's job and the father is to make sure that the next generation understands where they came from, and that you read. And I know that we all have that. You start with the Torah and you start on page 1, and then you end in, hey, what are we going to do now? We're going to start on page 1 again. And it's like we just keep reading it, and it's amazing how it keeps changing, God. And as you grow older, and I have my kids saying that, when did they put that in the Torah? Well, it's because you're changing and it means something different to you. So, always that quest to be closer to God. Thank you.
Any other comments, ladies?
Can you remind me what the question was again?
Yes. What tools or resources does your faith traditions offer for you for your quest for equality?
So it's interesting in our the way we practice, we have 3 degrees. And so we'll start with someone who has not been initiated and is what we call a seeker. And typically what I run into with that is that the men are the first to raise their hands. They're the ones who talk the most, etc. in the beginning. And the women have to be told, I want to hear your voice. I know you have something to say, don't be silent. And we have to make space for them to talk. And by we, I mean the coven leaders. But in particular, the women have to be given permission, in a sense. This is less true with the younger generation, but when I'm working with people my age or older, that's the case. And the other thing is they have to learn certain skills to perform the rituals and so forth. And they are often quite interested in doing that, but they feel really uncomfortable being the one calling the shots. I've never had that problem, but other people do, and I understand that. So in a couple of cases, yeah, we've really had to work with the men to kind of tone it down a little bit, and work with the women to kind of raise them up and give them a platform to try it and experience it and discover and become comfortable with and facile and make it easy for them to discover themselves. And when they get to the point where they're expected to priestess a ritual and to contact the goddess, there's often a completely different person standing in front of us because she's discovered her power. And she is no longer somebody who is content to let others make decisions for her, or even if she agrees with somebody, she's not going to be told what to do. And I find that transformation really fascinating. I know that it happens naturally in the course of ordinary life with women as we get older. When you become a mother for the first time, which I have not experienced, I imagine there's a change there. But I'm also aware that when we get to that certain time of life, we're just a lot less willing to be told to shut up. And my last thing I wanted to let you know is I was reading or listening to a YouTube article about one of the members of a rock group called Pussy Riot, which originated in Russia, was jailed for 2 years by Russian police for daring to make a song that condemned Putin. And her words to every woman in the world right now is, find your voice and use it while you still have one.
Very nice. So from my side, I grew up in a family Hindu family, and we were practicing Hindu household. So normally in our households, we have like a daily prayer, like everybody else, is is like a norm, right? We have to keep doing that. And then we have a special place where we keep our deities and we worship them, part of our praying rituals. So what I learned very early on in childhood itself was Hinduism is one of the religions where goddesses are worshipped. I mean, women are worshipped as goddesses. And so that was very important for me to learn. And then, for important things like wealth, knowledge, power, they are goddesses. These are very important things, and you go to goddesses for that. That was important for me. And then the three chief Hindu deities that we call, so I wouldn't really call them so Brahma is one of the god who we say is the creator of the universe. And then you have Vishnu, who is the sustainer of this whole creation while it is in existence. And then Shiva, who eventually just manages to, either take care of it or destroy it and try a new one when Brahma has to create a new destiny. So these three, they're never depicted without their consorts, so you have their wives with them always when we pray to them. Now that is pretty big. And then in modern times, some of these gods that I speak about, you may not know, but in modern times, especially like the ISKCON, which is a great following globally, in US also, they worship and they are followers of Krishna. And so Krishna is always his name is taken along with Radha. So, as part of their greeting, they will say, Radhe Krishna, Radhe Krishna. And they pray like that. They raise their hands and they chant, like this, Radhe Krishna, Radhe Krishna. So the woman's name or his consort's name is taken, before his name. And then similarly, Ramayana is another epic, which is very popular in Southeast Asia. Lord Rama, people know about him also. He's also never talked about without his wife's name, which is Sita. And so two forms of greetings are very common. Some people will just say Ram Ram, like, hi, hello. So, or it is Sita Ram. So you take the wife's name and the husband's name. So, growing up in that kind of culture, it has been my resources have been that, my faith offers me this chance for equality. I don't take it it's just taken for granted that I'm not a second citizen and everything. I was raised like that. I raised two daughters like this with the same feeling. I look around me, most of my families, my friends, they're also in the same way. So it just comes with your culture.
That's wonderful. And at this point, before the last question, we have a musical number that was written by Jeff Morton and directed by him. It's called Bike, and it's a kind of a social work.
can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I'd like to have like point and counterpoint regarding the goddess versus God.
Okay.
From a Muslim point of view and also from the Jewish point of view.
Okay, just a second.
Sure.
If you are enjoying tonight's program and would like to make a donation to the Interfaith Council, please visit the link below. Will put this in the chat for us. These programs are all done by volunteers, and it would be greatly appreciated if you would like these kind of events to continue. We could use your donations at this time. We also do have a matching grant going on for the Interfaith Council. We have a $10,000 matching grant, and if you'd like to donate in any way to that, that would be wonderful. Thank you. To follow up, before a question, Maimoona, did you want to address Thea?
I wanted to address the idea of God and goddess. I grew up Jewish, and partway through college, I became an atheist for some period of time, and then an agnostic. And 8 years later, I discovered Islam. But at any rate, I didn't change my concept of God very much at all, hardly at all, going from Judaism to Islam. And in Arabic, like in Hebrew and in many languages, we have a word, a name of anything is either male or female. We have that in French and Spanish as well. El libro, the book in Spanish, or la ventana, the window, is feminine. But in Arabic, it's the same idea, except the word for Allah, God, which is also used by the Christian Arabs, it's neither a feminine nor a masculine. And we believe that God, the creator, so in other words, you cannot make a plural out of it and have gods, and neither can you have God or goddess. It's beyond male and female. And the same in Judaism. And in fact, the word for God in Judaism is so powerful, it's not even said. The word Adonai, Lord, is said, but not the word for God. So it's a different perspective. And both beliefs basically say there is only one God, but there's God, the creator, and everything else is the creation. And so we are part of the creation, all the animals, all the vegetation, all the planets, the universe, everything, and all of the things that we call science, whether it's gravity that holds us here on Earth, or whether it's photosynthesis, all of these things are things that God has created for us. And science is the way of understanding what God has created. So it's the Godhead is indivisible. However, as far as men and women, that's where, as human beings, we have equal rights and equal responsibilities. And so I just wanted to draw that difference, because I'm speaking on behalf of both Judaism and Islam, and ultimately Christianity as well, where there is one God. The Muslims say there is no God, or there's nothing to worship but God. And the Jews say, "Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one." I just wanted to differentiate, because I know we have other faith traditions here. And I thought it was important to just make that point.
Okay.
Okay.
Yes, no, that's absolutely true. We are here to hear all, and it's just wonderful to have all these different points of view. I can't tell you, it's just been so enjoyable tonight. And to end, for the last or a few minutes, the remaining, how can women of faith empower each other towards greater equality? And I think this is a good chance right now to think how we can work to make this a better world. And I'll just say quickly, for me, the Interfaith Council of Contra Costa County is my little world of where I see the larger world of humanity could actually become. So to me, that's what it really means. So what does it mean to you? And I think you were going to speak.
Yeah, I can start. So I will just say that, like you, I'm so grateful to be here and take this moment to honor and to celebrate women and our pivotal role in the dawning of a new and more balanced and peaceful age. I think we've all talked about how women have a profound capacity to live according to higher principles. I think that in that way, we play a role in the speeding up of all of our spiritual progress. As a woman of faith, I see my job as learning to expand that love that I have for my child and for my family, and to share it with my neighbors throughout the county and very much beyond. That universal love, that impersonal love is the way that I think that's how we'll solve some of the problems that we're talking about right now, these long-standing problems of inequity. Because of course there isn't anything that we wouldn't do for our close ones and our children. We would never turn our backs on them. It would be inconceivable to do that. So when we can expand that capacity to love and see everybody as our own family, then we become unified in that loving service to one another. No one suffers, and that's equality. And I think that that's what draws people, like many of you, to White Pony Express, because our motto is all of us taking care of all of us. And people sign up because we're serving our one human family. We don't make any distinction between a giver or a receiver. We're all benefited. And I was really so enjoying the quotes that people were sharing from their own faith traditions. And so I'll just close with a quote by Mir Baba, who says, "To love God in the most practical way is to love our fellow beings. If we feel for others in the same way that we feel for our own dear ones, we love God."
Thank you for sharing that. That's really touched me very much right there. You know, my father passed away just before the COVID lockdown, and it wasn't due to COVID, and it was sudden. And so my family wasn't really prepared. But that meant that I took on taking care of my mother. And I realized pretty quickly that I needed to take care of myself first. It's that old, you're in an airplane and the oxygen masks drop, you know, you have to put yours on first. And it's hard for women because so often we are the caregivers, and we need to take care of ourselves. We need to put ourselves on the same level of need and deserving of love and to have our needs met that we put our loved ones on. And so one of the things I think it's important to teach all children, regardless of gender, is that women are deserving. We are not second class, and we have things to offer that are benefits, not just the personal interactions, but the world in its entirety would benefit from having equality between the sexes. And lastly, I just want to thank each and every one of the women here, because you're clearly women who understand this. They're kind of preaching to the choir. I am a little disappointed that we don't see more men, but I want to also appreciate the men that are here. This isn't male bashing at all, because you have, you need us and we need you.
And this is the best turnout for men at this event in its history. Yay!
So I'd like to just add my understanding of the question, that how can women of faith help each other, right? So I think from a theological perspective, having a theological advocacy in helping or I should say in clearing up the misunderstanding or misrepresentations or misinterpretations, I guess, of some religious texts that have justified some kind of a segregation in the society along the gender lines will be very helpful from women of faith who can read and preach or, talk a little bit more about that. That would be really helpful, because through advocacy, collaboration, open discussion around the barriers that exist, these things can be broken down. And from a perspective, from a faith perspective, or just a women's perspective, women have certain characteristics and powers which they carry because they are females, right? And they are expected. It's kind of a moral obligation that we bring these gifts forward in the world, and we should encourage and bring other women into holding leadership positions in faith communities, in social communities. I think that would be somewhere where we can empower each other towards greater equality that we see than what we see today.
From my perspective, if religion is to play a constructive role in society, the very concept of religion, as well as its nature and purpose, needs to be re-examined. A new discourse is needed, one that is suited to the needs of the age we live in. Religion has to be seen as an ongoing process through which humanity becomes conscious of the spiritual dimension of human life and learns to orient its individual and collective life accordingly. At the core of religion is a set of spiritual principles which together, all of them, form the common heritage of humankind. We can't dismiss any of them because it's something that we keep building on. And at each stage of human history and development, religion acquires new meanings, new significance, new functions, and new expressions. And today, the voice of woman must be heard in these discussions and in these dialogues. The achievement of gender equality requires, from all levels of society, from governance, from religion, and the fearless commitment of men alongside women, an understanding that advancement of women is the advancement of all. And the Baha'i community looks forward, really, I and the Baha'i community, I'm speaking on behalf of the Baha'i community of Contra Costa, we look forward to working towards the betterment of humanity as we join in dialogue about this principle of equality of men and women and the oneness of humanity. And honestly, it is our hope that in this way, we will learn from each other and we'll have a better understanding of each other's perspectives. So collectively, not just one faith, but collectively, we can advance our efforts towards the realization of a social order that supports this issue that we're talking about. And we talked about community service, and we talked about we are here to serve our brothers and sisters. And I 100% agree with that. In the Baha'i community, we have set up institutions that will flourish and support the education of children, and not just Baha'i children. These schools and these institutions are open for all, so we can all get together and learn and grow. So for our children and for our junior youth and for the adults. So it's an open forum for everyone to come and learn and spread and work together. As the Baha'is say, in serried lines, arm in arm, fighting to break down these walls and barriers that have been developed through centuries. And women have that voice and the power. But we need our men also. We can't do it ourselves. We have to cooperate. So thank you.
Oh, I wish we could go longer. I just noticed one comment of Linda Doran in the chat. She said for her to work with a group of Church of Women United have made work, to work with the group of Church Women United and have been worked with 14C. A lifelong Methodist, this for me is how I am able to connect through the women's movement and to remain to be inspired.
And Linda's a former council member.
Yes. I
would say it's not 14C. You couldn't hear me.
I did that again. I've done that before, and I know it's I4C. In fact, I'm in for putting a small I there because I've done that. I thought I would never do that, and I just did it. Thank you, Linda.
Yeah, I'm Secretary of Northern California, Northern Nevada unit. I've stayed in touch even. However, after 60 years in our county, our local unit of Central Contra Costa County disbanded in 2018. However, I've been so inspired and my heart with the women's movement to continue in a larger capacity for them. So we're here, and we all certainly would not turn down any other interfaith. Because when it changed from the Council of Churches, I had one foot in the ecumenical Christian women's movement, one foot in the, when it was changing. Yeah. So you have one foot in the ecumenical Christian movement. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, ladies, so much for tonight. A lot to think about. I continue to wish you the best on your faith paths, and that you continue to be an asset to your own faith and to the community, which we can all see that you already are. And I personally have been moved by your feelings that you shared tonight. So we want to thank you on behalf of the Interfaith Council of Contra Costa. Thank you for being a part of this program for the Women's National Day.
Thank you, Diane.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everybody.
Every day should be a Woman's Day.
Yes.
It's not just once a year. Every day we have to work.
So true.
Thank you. Thanks, Will. Thanks.
We do have one more piece of music we want to share with you before our time is over.
Before you go, just one more piece.
One more piece of music. Here we go. Uh-oh. I wonder if the, let me just see real quick. There it is. Just need to put the video in.
It's really charming. If you have a moment to stay, it's a charming work by the Contra Costa Girls Choir.
Okay, let me get this. Here we go. Make sure that there we are. Okay, here we go. Still? I'm sorry, one more technical thing to do. One last thing, I needed to get the build out there. Sorry about that, to get the words out of the way.
We get to see more of you, Will.
Stop that.
You with the sad eyes, don't be discouraged. Oh, I realize it's hard to take courage in a world full of people. You can lose sight of it, and the darkness inside you makes you feel so small. But I see your truth.
Blessed be, friends. Thanks for being here. Have a
Good
great
night,
night.
everyone.
Good night. Thank you.
Night. Wonderful
Hey.
evening.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Lovely to hear all the speakers. You're so inspiring.